We are about to begin, and we will ask if you will allow the panelists to join at this time for the Wake County Board of Commissioners. Thank you for joining the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association Candidates Forum. The RWCA is a nonpartisan organization committed to the economic, social, and welfare of historically marginalized populations in Wake County. We advocate for public policy and improvement for those communities and that particular population in part. And so we thank you so much for joining us for the Candidates Forum, which is being sponsored by the RWCA Impact, which is a separate organization from the parent body. We appreciate your taking time to be with us on this evening. We will allow 2 minutes for you to introduce yourselves, and we will start with Cheryl Stallings, followed by Vicki Adamson, and then Matt Calabria.
Okay, can you all hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, well, good evening, and thank you for having us this evening. So I'm Cheryl Stallings, and I am running for an open seat on the Wake County Board of Commissioners. I'm a native of North Carolina, grew up in the eastern part of the state on a family farm. And after high school, I attended NC State and East Carolina universities. And with the help of financial aid and scholarships and part-time jobs, I earned a doctorate degree and became a school psychologist. After graduation, I worked in a number of public schools in our state, including Wake County, as a school psychologist, providing mental health services to students and consultation services to teachers and administrators. My husband, Mark, and I have lived in Wake County for over 30 years now. We've lived in Zebulon, Raleigh, and now Apex. We chose Apex as the place to raise our son, Charlie. And when Charlie was in preschool, I transitioned my work to a mental health practice in Raleigh. So I've been in the mental health practice for about 20 years, again, serving children, adolescents, and families with mental health needs throughout Wake County. I also co-own the business, so I'm a small business owner as well. And in 2019, I ran and won a seat on the Apex Town Council. I was elected in November of 2019, and then COVID hit in March 2020. So for the past 2.5 years, I've been working with my council colleagues to do a lot of COVID mitigation and supporting our residents and businesses and town staff with COVID mitigation. And additionally, I've got experience in the municipal government world with managing budgets and making decisions about infrastructure, housing affordability, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, as well as thoughtful growth decisions within the context of environmental stewardship, while also managing carefully our school capacity and traffic needs. So I think my experiences as a psychologist, a mental health professional, a small business owner, as well as a town council member gives me a good skill set to be on the county commission. And I'm looking forward to this opportunity of expanded public service, working with the folks that are on the board to try to continue to create equitable opportunity for a healthy and sustainable economy, community, and environment for all. So I'm looking forward to this time with you all this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vicki. I'm Vicki Adamson. I'm currently in my second term on the Wake County Commission, and I'm running for my third term. I'm also a native North Carolinian, and I moved to Raleigh in 1983, so I consider myself almost a native Raleigh person as well. And because when I got here, the Beltline wasn't even finished, so it's a very different place than what I came to. But I did a lot of volunteer work in the decades leading up to my decision to run. And I decided to run because when you volunteer, you can help a lot of folks as one person, but you can really help a lot more through policy. And I'm really proud of some of the policy that we have passed in the last 4 years that has led to the creation of a lot of affordable housing, a lot of help for our citizens who suffer from substance use disorder and the opioid crisis, and we're supporting a lot more folks in our detention center with their opioid use disorders. And we've also invested a lot of money in public schools. And I'm really proud of the work we've done with that. And I'm going to just talk short tonight since I don't have an opponent. I'm going to leave it more up for you to listen to the folks who are opposed in November. And thank you for having this forum.
Thank you for joining us. Matt?
Hey, again, I'm Matt Calabria. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you to the RWCA and all the organizations that have worked to put this on and continue to work to put these forums on year after year. So I really appreciate your work here. I have been a Wake County Commissioner since 2014. I'm a Raleigh attorney where a lot of my practice actually deals with voting rights cases and voting access cases. I'm a resident down here in Fuquay Varina with my wife Molly and our 4-year-old daughter Eleanor. I'm the product of public schools from kindergarten all the way through college, went to UNC as an undergraduate and Duke for law school, although I always tell people I still cheer for the right team. And I've been living here in Wake County and practicing law ever since. Many of you all will remember what it was like in 2014 before we swept out some folks who were just not doing very much good for Wake County on the county commission. And since then, we've really, I think, affected a sea change. My goal then is the same as my goal now, which is to improve quality of life for everyone and create opportunities for everyone, no matter who you are, your age or stage or walk of life, and to make smart investments in our people and in our infrastructure for the long-term good of our county. And I think with folks like Commissioner Adamson and others, we've been able to do that. On education, we've really focused on the continuum from cradle to career, greatly expanding our early childhood offerings, making sure our folks are adequately paid, we can recruit and retain the best people in our K-12 system, and also supporting worker training as well. We've greatly expanded public transportation throughout the county, tried to tackle our housing affordability challenges head on, and hopefully we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit more about that. And also looking at some of our burgeoning and emerging criminal justice issues and substance abuse issues and so many other things that we know are really affecting our community. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity over these 8 years to serve the county, and I'm looking forward to continuing that work.
Thank you for joining us as well, Matt. We will ask a series of questions and you will have 2 to 3 minutes to respond to each question. As I said, it's a panel, and so 3 of us will be asking questions for now. I will raise my hand if you exceed the 3-minute time frame and ask that you stop so the next question can be asked. I will begin with the first question. What is your top priority for Wake County? And so we will start with Cheryl, then Vicki, and then Matt.
That's a tough question because I have several, but I would say probably the top one would be housing affordability. And I think the county is moving in the right direction. In fact, I've spent a lot of time talking with Commissioner Adamson, who is chair of the Housing Affordability Committee, and she has shared this nice handout that the county already has developed. So I think there are a lot of good things in place, but I know a lot of people are still struggling with housing affordability. I've had experience working on that in Apex, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to hopefully join the board to continue to expand this throughout Wake County.
And Cheryl, the second part to that question, what more would you do as a county commissioner?
I think for once I want to sustain the work that's already being done. And then I'm open to, with my county commissioners, to see how can we expand the work. I don't have easy answers to that. I think it's probably going to be a multi-pronged approach, working with community stakeholders and public-private partnerships, but I'm opening to getting to work and working with my colleagues on trying to expand the work, because I think we do need to expand the work.
Thank you. Vicki, the question is the same for you. What is your top priority for Wake County?
Housing. I think that's everybody's top priority, and not just affordable housing, but housing in all price ranges. Because even middle income families who wouldn't qualify for assistance just can't afford to live in Wake County. And $1,500 a month for 500 square feet is not affordability to me.
And so the second part to that question, Vicki, would be, what more would you do?
What we're what we announced today, we had a housing affordability committee meeting this morning, and where we're really short is in preservation of current affordable housing. And as county government, we have tried to purchase a couple of apartment complexes and we've lost them. We're just not agile enough. So back in March, and Matt and I worked on this a lot together, we created a public-private partnership foundation that will work on affordability, and we seeded it with $10 million, and our goal was to reach 60 million. So we announced this morning we're at almost $62 million. So what I'm going to do is deploy those funds, make sure they're deployed where it's really going to help our citizens the most. And I
Thank
just
you.
need to, yeah, thank you.
Matt, the same question applies to you. What is your #1 priority for Wake County?
I think my answer as far as the topic is the same. I think we've got a housing affordability challenge, and I would actually break it down into two parts. We've got an affordable housing problem, a dearth of government supported housing, and then we've got a housing affordability problem where we know that everybody is seeing cost of living increase. So whether it's government supported or not, we know that we've got structures in our community that are causing cost of living to increase pretty substantially. Some of the things, just to get to the second part of your question, that I think we ought to be doing about it include acting as a convener with our municipalities, and Commissioner Adamson and I have been working on that to sit down with them, because 80% of the population and more than 80% of the growth is occurring in our municipalities. So we've got to bring them to the table, set a rubric of things that we might expect from them or we might hope to work with them on, and provide resources and know-how to strengthen our partners as well. We've got to continue our housing preservation work, which is really important, and we've really moved mountains there. I'm very proud of the program that Commissioner Adamson described. And then lastly, we've got to work on not just renters, who are the worst off statistically by and large, but also property owners. And we've been on the front end of exploring a lot of things that we can do to help lighten the load on longtime local homeowners as well.
Thank you. Mariana?
I fought with my mouse last night and it won, but I'm gonna win tonight with this mouse. So thank you so much for you all and attending the forum. You talked about your first priority. What is your second priority? There are a myriad of things in Wake County that needs addressing, needs collaboration, needs our private and public partners to collaborate to address these issues. So share your second priority and how you intend to address that. Cheryl, you're first.
Okay. Again, I have a close second and third, but I'm going to go with public education, and I have to confess that public mental health and public health is closely behind that. But I'm going to say public education because public education is so important, because it's investing in our children, it's investing in our communities, and it's investing in our future. So again, I think the County Commission is doing a good job here, but I want us to continue to support the school system like we are. I think currently the County Commission is paying at least about a third of Wake County's operating expenses, and then are also responsible for school construction, new schools, as well as renovation. So I think this is very important, but we probably all know the Leandro decision is currently in the courts. It's been in the courts for over 25 years. It's in the courts currently. I fully support funding the Leandro decision. And I really want to collaborate and continue strong collaboration with our colleagues in the General Assembly, to make sure they're fully funding education as they're supposed to. And then I think we obviously will do our partnership with them as well. But we need a certified teacher in every classroom. We need a certified principal in every building, and we need support personnel. We need guidance counselors, psychologists, all custodians. We need bus drivers. So I fully support all the work that we can do to advocate for that to be done.
Thank you.
Vicki?
Yeah, well, it's hard to pick a second. I would say the opioid crisis, because we're seeing we have just a lack of access. We have a lot of programs, but it's hard for our citizens who need those services to access them. And of course, opioid and drug addiction just tears families apart. Pretty much the majority of children in our foster care system come out of some family situation that has some type of addiction in it. And we currently have about 600 children in our foster care system. So we're fortunate to get some of the opioid settlement money, and we voted to deploy it last night. And what we're going to spend the lion's share of it on is the barriers for people to get treatment, whether it's transportation to get to clinics, housing, whatever they need for treatment, because we have got to start really focusing on getting our families back together. And right now, that's the number one factor we're seeing.
Thank you, Vicki. And Matt.
I would highlight the importance of creating a more equitable economy in Wake County. A lot of you all will know that last year when I did my tour of duty as chair of the board, I identified prosperity for all as the theme for our work last year. And I think that we provide a lot of great services. We have done tremendous work, and I'd like to see us amplify our work in so many different areas with a lens toward economic equity, providing opportunity for folks from all walks of life. And I'll give you a few examples of that. We've already expanded greatly our worker training program and created a nationally recognized program in the Wake Works program that I was honored to spearhead a couple of years ago. Vicki, just this past week, we've been talking about expanding that program to include more professions so that we can provide paid apprenticeships and free Wake Tech educations for people who are in critical need fields. We have an awesome new program called Neighborhood Networks that we haven't rolled out yet, but it's coming, that better integrates our human services with our school system, because we know our guidance counselors and social workers in the school system are already strapped, but half of our 4,000 employees on the county side work in human services. And we've got tremendous resources to bear, but a lot of times there are kids in particular, but people, disadvantaged folks in general who don't have access or haven't been connected to those services. And I think we're going to really do a better job of partnering with our school system friends to do that. We're expanding early childhood education, not just to cover low-income 4-year-olds, which we've now achieved universally accessible 4-year-old preschool. And now we are just launching the 3-school program to target low-income 3-year-olds. And we've also been doing things like incentivizing businesses that come in to pay a living wage. We've got to expand on those things. And for example, create a program that really encourages businesses to pay a living wage, recognize them when they do, highlight them and elevate them when they do, and engage in other good and equitable business practices. Continue to expand in partnership with Wake Tech and others, opportunities for particularly disadvantaged entrepreneurs to have a leg up and to be able to develop their ideas and products and services, and any number of programs. But I think we've dealt in just in the time I've been on the board, we've dealt with education crises, transportation crises, affordable housing crises, and if we're not careful, the next crisis is going to be an economic inequity crisis. And so my goal is to head that off at the pass.
Thank you, Matt. Our next question will come from Cranston Artis.
And Chairman Leach, I just want to say that LT is monitoring the chat, and there's Q&A. There's a question in the
Thank
Q&A.
you.
Good evening. So my question is, what will be your priorities in the budgeting process with Wake County Public School System? And let's start with Vicki Adamson.
Thank you. It's good to see everybody tonight. We're in a really tough situation with budgeting for public education. Statutorily, we're only required to build schools. And I think we do that very well. I think we build good buildings. I think we build buildings that are designed for learning with collaboration spaces and just buildings you want to send your children to. And operating expenses are supposed to be the responsibility of the state. And I think we give, it's a little over $500 million a year for operating expenses. And last year we had to raise taxes, and all of that additional tax money went to public education. So, and it continues to need to be a priority for us. But at some point, we're not going to be able to continue to do that because we can't raise taxes every year. But we are trying to think of creative ways to approach the General Assembly to get them to step their game up and maybe even fund the Leandro case. And we are in the process of creating a joint legislative agenda with the school board. And we've got some businesses on board who are going to present that to our legislators. So I'm hoping if we can get a critical mass of the business community to say this is what we want, then hopefully our legislators will cut us a little more money. But public education has to be a top priority, because that's where it all starts. And without a good education, if you start behind, typically you stay behind. So I'm very committed to public education. I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, but that would be, because we don't do school policy, we're just a funder. Public education to us is a budget line item. Thank you.
Yes, you answered. Thank you. Mr. Calabria.
Thank you. And again, the question was regarding budget priorities related to public education. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I would agree with Commissioner Adamson. And what's difficult is that when you're picking priorities in a major field where you have so many needs, it almost feels like picking amongst your children to identify a few things. I totally agree about the state dynamic, and that's actually a national trend of legislatures pulling back their funding and requiring local governments to step in. Let me identify a few things that would be particularly appealing to me and compelling to me as budgetary priorities, acknowledging, of course, that we have to defer to our school board colleagues, because that's their role, is to identify what they need, and we need to pay a certain level of deference to that. One, I think we need to continue to support non-certified staff. We have huge deficits, lots of open positions, and a lot of people who really need to make a living and get by. And so really focusing on our bus drivers and cafeteria workers and others, I think would be a compelling use of county funds and would really strengthen our public school system and our economy. Second, I really am interested in continuing to explore those wraparound services and those human services integrations with our school system because of the potential impact they can have. And I'll just also mention a pet project that I want to explore in the coming year, which is seeing what Wake County can do to augment a teaching fellows program that has all but withered away on the state level, because I think we have got to really make sure that we build a strong pipeline of educators for years to come. The state did away with their teaching fellows program, then realized that was a huge mistake, and then they kind of brought back a halfway program that frankly isn't very good. And so what can Wake County do to strengthen the pipeline, especially in areas where we need it, math and science teachers and others? Those are the kinds of things that I'll be looking for. But again, of course, we have a huge amount of needs in our school system as we emerge from the pandemic, especially.
Thank you, Matt. And Cheryl.
Thank you. I think I would say, broadly speaking, personnel, sort of as follow-up to what I said earlier, in terms of what Leandro is recommending, is a certified teacher in every classroom, a certified principal in every building, support personnel, our counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, and also our bus drivers and custodians. And so I would agree, personnel, just down the ballot sort of a personnel, I think would be enriching our children's education in terms of education as well as mental health.
Thank you. And the question from the chat is, property taxes have been raised 6 of the last 8 years. Give the last I'm sorry, my question went away.
Look under the dismissed section. It's still there.
Okay. Property taxes have raised 6 of the last 8 years. Give the last increase of the tax rate and the value of homes. How do you plan to make housing affordable? And we will start with Vicki.
Thank you. That's a good question. Like I said, the taxes we raised last year for this budget year all went to public education. And if we can get the state to take up that burden, we could have increased county services that we needed for growth without a tax increase. What we are doing, Matt and I have been working with the One Wake group in Southeast Raleigh, working with neighbors to see what we can do to help alleviate the tax burden for them. Because we understand this is a huge burden for some people. So that's
Thank
what
you.
we're working on.
Matt?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I think people are especially acutely feeling it now because of the national housing affordability crisis and the international inflation crisis that we're seeing. A few things. I think in function and in effect, property taxes have gone up, but most people don't realize that the property tax rate in Wake County, and I can't speak about Raleigh or Cary or Knightdale or any other place, but the property tax rate for Wake County is actually probably about a cent more than it was in my first budget 8 years ago. But what has happened is we've grown as an area, property values have increased, cost of living has increased, and that has increased the total net amount that might be collected from homeowners. And we know that this is an issue, and we know it disproportionately affects gentrifying communities, of course. Unfortunately, under the state system that we have right now, we don't have the ability to make property taxation more progressive. We don't have the ability to provide much in the way of breaks or supports for low-income property owners or seniors on fixed incomes, those kinds of folks. So the first thing that we need to do, and we've had some conversations, I've personally had some conversations with Senator Chaudhry and Senator Batch's office, is seeing what we can do to give counties a little bit more leeway so we can provide more flexibility, tax breaks, a lower tax rate perhaps, or a maximum taxation amount to low-income folks. So how can we expand the amount, the degree to which we can be flexible? And of course, that's going to be state level advocacy, but we're already working on that. We're also looking at supports for property owners in all sorts of different ways. What can we do to support? We've got a lot of folks and things in the hopper right now with One Wake, but also what can we do to look at the overall cost of living? So housing is number one. Transportation is number two. So what can we do to make transportation more accessible? What can we do to help people with their utility bills or needed repairs on their homes, or walkability issues, transportation issues? There are so many things that we can look into here, and I think that will help tremendously.
Thanks, Matt. And Cheryl?
Okay. Yes, I would agree with my two colleagues that I think collaboration with the General Assembly is so important to try to continue to see if we can get some tax relief from the General Assembly. And sort of what Matt said earlier, for equitable economic development, I think if we can help raise the incomes that some of our residents have will also be helpful in this regard as well, trying to really continue to target economic development opportunities for maybe our modest to lower wage earners to try to help lift them, to help increase their incomes.
Cheryl, Matt, and Vicki, thank you so much for taking time to be with us on this afternoon. We will be following up with our recommendations within the forthcoming days. Thank you again and have a great evening.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Our next panel will come from the Wake County Board of Education. If you will let those panelists in, please. Do we have all the panelists on for the Wake County Board of Education? And we have one panelist that's upside down.
I am so sorry. And I do not know how to make it switch back over.
I can't help you.
I've never seen that before.
I'm technology challenged. In any event, we will move forward, and let me say thank you to everyone who's been able to join us on this evening. We are so fortunate to have you come before us. This will be a panel presentation given on behalf of the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association Impact, which is a nonpartisan organization that's a part of the RWCA, but operates separately. RWCA is the parent body. And we have been a community-based organization that targets public policy, in particular to historically marginalized communities. And so again, we are fortunate to bring this panel as a part of our educational outreach. We will allow a minute for each of you to introduce yourselves. And so I will go in order of who appears on my screen. And Doug, I believe you're first.
Mr. Chair, we've got one person who hasn't been let in just yet.
Thank you. We will wait for that person to come in. Thank you. And I see that he has joined us. So Doug, if you will begin with your 1-minute introduction, followed by Lynn.
My name's Doug Hammock, running for District 3 School Board. And I've been living in Wake County since '95. My kids went through Wake County Public Schools. I'm running for school board because school was so transformative in my life as a young person. It fundamentally reset the trajectory of my life. I watched it bring benefit to my children as they've now moved out into their careers and they've been prepared well in Wake County. I've watched the decline in funding and the concerns about us continuing to hold out such a great school district as we have. And I'm an old person and I want to contribute to the well-being of future generations. I've got grandkids about to start. Well, some of them have already started in this district. And I want to make sure that next year, Wake County Public Schools are strong, and 10 years and 20 years from now, Wake County Public Schools are strong. I want to make sure that they're good for my kids, but for every kid who lives in Wake County. So it's a little bit.
Thank you, Doug. Lynn, your minute of introduction.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
I just realized my microphone fell over. All right, here we go. I did it again. My name is Lynn Edmonds. I'm running for one of the 5 open school board seats. It's District 5, which is the district currently held by Dr. Jim Martin, and I do have his endorsement and support. And I'm the mother of 2 adult children that both graduated K-12 through Wake County Public Schools. I myself am the product of Durham Public Schools, as is my husband. And I've been a volunteer in the system for more than 20 years when you include my engagement with the PTAs at my children's school and booster clubs. But I also found ways to be engaged at the district level on board advisory councils, which are citizen advisory councils to the various board members in the various districts. I served on the District 4 Council with Rosa Gill when she was still on the school board, and I'm still a member of the District 5 BAC under Dr. Martin. I'm an at-large member of the Wake County Library Commission, which means that the freedom to read and access to books is very important to me. I joined that commission in 2016, understanding the relationship between reading and early literacy on student achievement and student success. And I'm very much looking forward to serving on the school board to bring my advocacy for public education to the school board level and influence policy and hopefully improve our funding and student achievement and well-being. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn. Ms. Livington. I can't see your name clearly here.
Livingston, that's okay.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation as well. Hello, everyone. My name is Dajma Livingston, and I'm running for Wake County Board of Education here in Raleigh District 6. I am a teacher here in North Carolina. I have taught in Wake County Public Schools and in Durham County Public Schools, and specifically charter schools. And one thing that I like to focus on when it comes to having a career in education and choosing a career in education is always promoting that I'm not in it for the money. I am in it for the upliftment of all kids in North Carolina and specifically in Wake and Durham County. I pour my everything into my career and stability is education. A little bit about me. I was raised here from 5 years old. I went to Wendell Elementary School, raised in Wendell on Old Zebulon Road. So a nice little median right there between Wendell and Zebulon. And I went to Wendell Elementary, went from Wendell to Zebulon Middle School, from Zebulon Middle School to Eastwake High School, and from Eastwake High School to East Carolina University, where I gained my bachelor's in English with a concentration in social sciences and communications. And I am earning my master's degree in adult education. And I love focusing in adult education because it provides vocational opportunities to our children and the mastery of it and knowing how to design that. One thing that I want to bring to Wake County is the push of vocational education, adequate nutrition and food options, public school safety and cultural diversity and awareness. That's what I would love to bring to the school board.
Thank you, Ms. Livingston. Ben, you have 1 minute to introduce yourself. And if I hold my finger up, I'm going to give you an additional 10 seconds to respond.
Sir. I'm Ben Clapsaddle, and I'm a candidate for District 1 of Wake Forest, Rollsville, down to Wendell and Zebulon. And I moved, the Army moved me here in 2005. And so I've been in, 16, 17 years now here in Wake Forest in Wake County. I'm a son of a career soldier and went to public schools from Kansas, Massachusetts, probably didn't say that right, but Virginia, and graduated from junior high and high school down here in Cumberland County. And it was I'm running because of what the teachers, coaches, music directors, the staff meant to me and my kids all across and helped me. And that's all I can say is help me. I was a kid of a soldier, no idea that I would have an opportunity to go to college, or was even thought that it was in my dreams. And if it wasn't for the teachers in public education to help me not only reach that dream, to achieve that and other things, and I owe it all to the teachers in public education. And so that's why I'm running. And I know we're going to talk some more, and I'll get the opportunity to expand on that. So I didn't want you to give me the finger yet, Mike. So, but and I understand there's a good one. But anyway, so yeah, I'm Ben Clapsaddle for District 1.
Thank you, Ben. And next we will have Tara, or is it Tara?
Hello, it's Tara.
Terry, Tara,
Tara.
I got it.
Okay.
You've got 1 minute to introduce yourself as well.
Well, thank you so much. I'm Tara Waters, and I was appointed to complete the unexpired term of Mr. Keith Sutton in District 4. And so I've been on the Wake Board of Education for a few months now, and I'm so excited for the opportunity to advocate for our students. This district is personally very important to me. I came to Wake County as a 6th grader and attended East Millbrook Middle School, and then went on to Millbrook High School. The district changed the trajectory of my life. I'm from a rural town that is about 2,500 people, about the population of one of our high schools. I was able to go on to college and earn a degree from NC State and a Master of Public Administration from East Carolina University. And so I have had multiple touch points with the district. I have been a student in the district. I worked in the district office from my senior year in Millbrook High School to my senior year of college. I have 2 children who are students in the district, one in pre-K program and one who is a middle schooler. And so I've also been serving on the board. So I have multiple touch points to the district. And I'll say that this is a district that is transformative for our students. And I want to advocate for our teachers. Our educators have poured so much into us. And I am grateful for the opportunity to champion for equity and trust for all of our students in our school communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Lindsay to introduce herself.
Good evening, and thank you for hosting this event so voters can be informed. We greatly appreciate it. My name is Lindsay Mahaffey. I'm the current chair of the Wake County Board of Education and represent District 8, which is Western and Southwestern Wake County. I am the mom of 3 students currently enrolled in Wake County schools, and they have been since kindergarten. And my background is in teaching. I have a master's in teaching social science, and I've also taught K-12 French and Spanish. And education is my passion. And the reason education is my passion is because education is about students. It's about reaching children, helping them grow into the adults that they will become when they are stewards of this world, when they are citizens of this world. And we need to make sure that they are lifelong learners. We need to make sure they have empathy and understanding for one another. And in order to do that, we not only have to do what's best for our student, but intrinsically, we have to do what's best for our teachers and our community in order to serve our students. And that is the reason that I am continuing to run for this position. And I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Samuel, you're up next.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sam Hershey. I'm running for Wake County Public Schools in District 6. And I'm running because I believe in the importance of public schools for all of our kids, for our families and our communities. I believe we need representatives on the school board that are true champions of public schools, like really like all of the current school board members that we have and that are running for re-election. When I was asked by our current school board rep, Christine Kushner, to run, I think she asked me for 3 reasons. One is my commitment to Wake County Public Schools. I am the only candidate in District 6 that has worked for Wake County Public School System. I'm the only candidate that has a kid in Wake County Public School Systems, and I currently serve on the PTA. 2, I think she asked me because of my commitment to our community. I was proud to win an award from the city of Raleigh this last year, a Fred Fletcher Outstanding Volunteer Award for a group project that we did up at Annie Louise Wilkinson Nature Preserve. And I also volunteer at the food bank. I'm an I-9 coach, assistant Cub Scout master. So all around the community. And I think she also asked me because of my character. If you know me, I'm someone that has integrity. I'm someone who listens to what you say. I'm someone that genuinely cares about what you are saying and how you are doing. And that will be reflected in the way that I serve on the school board. And I think those are
so much, Samuel.
Oh,
I'm sorry, you have time.
okay, thank you.
Our next introduction will come from Moniqua.
Hello, my name is Monica Johnson Hossler, and thank you very much, RWCA, for hosting this forum and for always being a beacon of education and awareness to our community. I am running for re-election from my first run in 2013. I would say to you, it's probably more like 2013 than ever before. I'm married to a public school educator here in Wake County. We have a high school senior this year, and it is personal. I'm a product of Thomasville Public City Schools at the time, and I do believe that that changed the trajectory of my life, and I sit in this seat so that community members, both adults, children, and our educators can see themselves and their goals reflected in myself and my decision making, and I hope to remain elected to see our district through tumultuous times as we continue to build and support our public school infrastructure for the greater good of all of our students.
Thank you, Monica. Next, we will have Tyler Swanson.
You would think teaching during the pandemic on Zoom, I would have learned how to mute and unmute. Still learning, but good evening. I am Tyler Swanson. I am running for Wake County Board of Ed and for District 9. I'm running for this seat because I believe that every child, every parent, and every student and community needs a champion. Those are the words of Rita Pierce, that our community needs a champion, someone that's going to fight for the issues and represent all of our students. And as a classroom teacher for the district, the only person in District 9 with actual classroom experience, I understand what that means firsthand. I understand what it means to build those meaningful relationships, to engage with our students, to help them become the best productive citizens that they can be once they leave our district. And I think now more than ever, we are seeing that we need champions in all 9 of these seats that are going to be the voice of teachers, that's going to be the voice of the communities, and that's going to fight for our public schools in the midst of a General Assembly that continues to undermine our public schools. So that is why I'm in this race, and I look forward to the questions that you all have for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Next, we have Michael Williams.
Good evening. I'm Mike Williams, running for District 4 representative. I am currently an education consultant for student transition services for the North Carolina Division of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. Prior to that, I was a special education teacher in Durham, and I have served as a school counselor, school administrator, as well as a school assistant principal. I'm a licensed school counselor, a licensed school principal, and a licensed division superintendent. I'm running for this particular seat for 4 basic reasons. Number one, I want to advocate for equitable resources within our schools. District 4 is comprised of some of the most fiscally challenged citizens in our county. Want to make sure that we're getting our share of resources based on the needs of our students. The second is to engage our community in the governance, administration, oversight of our schools to get us involved and get us active with what's going on in the schools. Additionally, we want to support our students as well as our parents and the teachers who serve them. The study recently came out that suspensions are going down, disciplines are going down for every population, with the exception of African-American males, as well as students with disabilities within our school district. And finally, I'm running because I believe that we ought to name our schools. We have educational icons that are within our district, within our area, and I think we ought to name our schools to give our students some role models to inspire them to achieve greatness.
Thank you. This will be a panel of questions that will be asked of you from a panel, I should say. And I will begin with the first question that comes from our chat. You will have a minute to respond to the question. And so we're trying to give everyone time to get a response in, considering the number of individuals that we have on with us tonight. So the question from the panel is, given the cultural divisiveness around certain issues, some of which include even competing bodies of scientific knowledge, such as whether there are only 2 genders as opposed to 1, what would be your position relative to these types of comments? And so we will start with Lynn.
I love this question. So some people want to distract us with culture war issues that they get people excited and riled up, but these are things that are not harming our children. What is harming our children in our schools is a lack of resources, a lack of funding. Our staffing shortages are very, very real and a very serious issue. And we need to trust our educators. They know what to do for our kids. These culture war issues are not what is harming our children. And I have been endorsed by, because you specifically cited gender issues, I've been endorsed by Equality NC, which is very important to me, because I believe that our children, our students need to be seen and represented no matter how they identify. And for many of our students that identify with LGBTQ, school is their safe space. And we need to make sure that that continues to be a safe place for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, I believe, in fact, I know that our schools need to be a safe environment. They need to be secure and they need to be inclusive. And when people divide and try to scare and bring that into our schools, it takes away from the learning environment. And so if you ask me how I would deal and what would I look for, I would look at reinforcing policies. I would look at reinforcing that every person, regardless of what their skin color is, regardless of their economic background, regardless of how they identify, feels safe and secure that they can learn and that we can help make them become the best they possibly can be. So that's how I feel about this divisiveness that people are trying to scare us with.
Lindsay.
Thank you. I think our focus, as I said in my opening statement, needs to be on our students. And our students need to feel safe and respected and loved, no matter how they come to our school, whether they identify a certain way, whether they have clean clothes, dirty clothes. We need to make sure our students feel loved and cared for and respected. And we have a non-discrimination ordinance in Wake County that does protect against many things, which include gender identity and sexual orientation. I'm proud to also be endorsed by Equality NC, but our focus needs to be on what's best for the students and giving the students a place where they can learn. So thank you.
Thank you. Samuel.
So I was looking at the chat and the person talked further about, are we teaching critical thinking and civil discourse, and that our teachers are absolutely teaching our children how to think critically. I mean, that's a huge part of the education in Wake County Public Schools. And as far as civil discourse goes, you know, for my kid being a second grader, yes, we want to teach our kids how to get along with each other, social emotional learning. I know we have, Dajma and I both have we're in the same race, and we have opponents that want to do away with that. They want to stop teaching kids how to get along, how to talk to each other, how to respond emotionally. So I believe we are teaching critical thinking in schools. I think our teachers are doing a great job at that, and they are teaching our kids how to get along.
Thank you. Monica.
Thank you. I did not see what was in the chat, so I will attempt to also address that just based on what you said, Sam. So Wake County Public Schools, like all schools in the state of North Carolina, have a curriculum that's dictated by North Carolina state standards. What I do believe that's important as Wake County Public Schools strategic plan has been very clear for nearly the 8 years I've been on the board, that critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity are important. So while parents still have a role and responsibility in what the beliefs are, our role and responsibility is to create a space where every student, as I said, representation matters. So do we have the ability to ensure that students understand that we are in an ever-changing world? We do. We can't ignore their consumption of social media. So they are bringing information into the classroom and want to be able to have a space where they can explore their own critical thinking and quite frankly, the public discourse that's happening. And our jobs as public educators and champions of public education is to meet the standards the state set, create safe environments where students can learn, while also giving them the ability to critically think and understand, and also actually create the space that we do not see in the public. And that is to be able to communicate while you disagree in the same space, which is what really leads us to critical thinking and communication, which is what our employers want to see as soft skills. So I think that we have the ability to do all of those things with the parameters of safety of our students. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. Tyler.
So I'm going to attempt, I think I got the two questions confused. So Mr. Leach, do you mind restating the question? Because the chat kind of confused me a little as well.
There was a question relative to the county being divisive, relative to the definition of if there's one sex or if there are two sexes or multiple sexes in terms of identification. And what is your position relative to that issue?
Thank you for restating that question. As a former teacher for the district, I have taught many students. And my number one thing is meeting the students where they are and addressing and making sure students feel safe. And so if that means referring to students as their preferred pronouns, that's what I've done, because I want to build those intentional relationships, because at the end of the day, it's our students' education system. And what we're saying, and I think this a lot of malarkey, as President Biden puts out, is a way to divide us and to take away from the real issue. And the real issue is that our students do not feel safe because of the fact that we have all this nonsense out here. And as teachers are doing their very best to balance what the state standards lay out, to balance the moments that we're in, and to teach the truths. And that is what teachers need, is a champion that's going to be able to push through the nonsense and focus the conversation back on what it is. And so this is the thing. The biggest issue is is the facts are the General Assembly and the North Carolina General Assembly has been undermining and underfunding our public schools for the past 10 years under Berger, Moore, and Tillis's leadership. And so we need a General Assembly that is going to that's going to believe in public schools and provide us with the resources that we need. And I will stop there.
Thank you. Michael.
So our schools do a pretty good job of reading, writing, and my clock would go off when I start talking. So please forgive the chime in the background. But our schools do a pretty good job of reading, writing, and arithmetic. But the one thing that I think we need to work on that would kind of help to resolve this issue is respect. If we begin to teach persons how to respect one another in spite of how they look, love, learn, or live, I think this would really be a non-issue. To begin to teach, not bring your personal values and your personal feelings and your personal ethics into it, but just respect a person's right to live how they want to live, to look how they want to look, to learn how they learn, and to love who they choose to love. Respect one another's values, respect one another's positions, respect one another's perspectives on life. If we begin to teach that, and if we begin to teach that, we will not only create a more respectful school, we'll also have a more respectful citizenship. And this critical, and these types of issues will be non-issues if we just learn how to respect one another. I think that's something that we need to work on.
Thank you. Ms. Livingston.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to build on Mr. Williams' statement. I think when it comes to being a teacher, even being a teacher myself, it is essential to teach children what being an American is. And being an American means that you are diverse and aware. And that is why it's one of my key points on being on the Board of Education or wanting to be on the Board of Education is to enforce cultural awareness and diversity and be able to reclaim, American history and nationality and bring that type of diversity and awareness to our children and not be ashamed to teach the truth and not be ashamed to accept whoever our scholars are, however they want to identify, because at the end of the day, it's for the future of our nation, not to nick and pick on who one likes or who one wants to love or who one wants to identify as. We have to support our scholars because they will be the future to our nation. And I'll leave it right there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Ms. Waters.
Thank you for this question. I think it's important to realize that our society is growing increasingly polarized, but we can all agree that education is our greatest path forward for our children. So we need to focus on our children and letting them show up as their authentic selves. And we need to put supports in place that allow that. I'm in support of passing an equity policy for Wake County Public School System to help identify ways that we can make our environment more inclusive. I also want to ensure that we have training on unconscious bias so that all of our educators know how to embrace and how to create environments that are conducive to learning for all of our students. I also think that we need to include our community in conversations so that we can build trust and build relationships so that when the student walks into that school building, they feel welcome, they feel prepared to learn, they feel able to show up as their authentic self, and that they feel that they are equipped with what they need to do. And so allowing people to show up as their authentic self is an important key to making sure that our students succeed.
Thank you so much. We will have a second question asked by President Sonia Barnes.
Thank you, Michael. My concern is, and I'm sure that everybody's aware, that since COVID, a lot of our students have fallen below grade level. So my question is, what strategy, technique, or what would you do to try to bring those students up to grade level? Do you have anything that you would employ or that you would like to see the system employ to help students come up to grade level?
Ms. Waters.
Thank you for that important question. I think it's important to look at our children holistically. The pandemic has affected their mental health, so making sure that we have good behavioral supports in place. And we also want to make sure that we have high impact tutoring. The district has recently launched a new program, Wake Together, to ensure that our students are able to get high impact one-on-one or 1-to-3 ratio tutoring so that they can get the additional support that they need to address their learning loss. And also just acknowledging that it has been a difficult couple of years for our students, and being able to build more community partnerships, bringing more organizations to the table who can provide the support that we need is really important. And making sure that we are really identifying ways that our students can continue to make steps toward improvement as bringing their parents into the conversation. So it's going to be a holistic approach using the community resources, using the families, and using high impact tutoring. Those are the ways that I see us being able to impact the learning loss of our students.
Thank you. Tyler.
Thank you. And I agree with Ms. Waters. I think it is a both-and approach. We cannot talk about our students' academic needs without talking about their mental health, because they're connected. If a student's mental health is not intact, so goes their academics. And so it's a holistic and it's a both-and. I have taught students who were A scholars prior to the pandemic and were failing because of mental health. And so this is the thing that we have to do. Number one, we do have to, I applaud the district's efforts for the tutoring that they're going to launch, that has been launched. I would support that, but I also think we have to respect teachers and bring more teachers back into the classroom. We are seeing a massive shortage across the nation of teachers due to the lack of respect that is being out there by some of the folks who don't believe in public education. So if we're going to address our students' academic health, we need a General Assembly that's going to increase the pay of teachers, because we cannot have teachers, we can't recruit and retain teachers with the salaries that the state has established in this last budget. We cannot necessarily, and I'm going to make this last point, Mr. Leach, and I'll stop. But we also need more school counselors in the building, more social workers to address the needs of all of our students. And so I will advocate for all of that and some once I'm elected to serve District 9 on the Board of Education.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, we're all building, I think we're all building together as we're coming up and answering your question, Michael. So when I think about this, then I look at it, one of the things that I failed to mention in the question before is dignity and respect, especially for our teachers also and all our staff. So I just want to put that in there. And I agree that we must have dignity and respect, but we must have this environment for our teachers also. But as we're building this, in fact, I was just thinking about my daughter is from Guatemala. And so, the number of Spanish interpreters or translators or someone there that's helping with the teachers, that are helping with our kids, our volunteers, and we all mentioned this, the citizen volunteers and some of the corporate volunteers to help us out, tutors, which is absolutely, it's going great. And I'll tell you, I'm a big advocate to help the teachers with the teachers' assistants that are in there to help focus on some of our children that have some additional needs that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you. So we have to, I trust and I know that our educators know how to help students be successful. They know how to help students achieve and be on grade level. We have to, as Tyler said, I agree with many of the comments already made. We have to support the profession. We have to support their professionalism. We have to support their skills and their abilities. And it is really hard to be a teacher in North Carolina. And I know that the current Wake County School Board and the fine people that I'm running with support educators and know that they know how to help students achieve. And we just need to do our best to try to support them. I am familiar with the Wake Together program. It is a brand new tutoring program that invites the community to be trained. It's a very specific training on tutoring with students, and I support that. So on the board, I would continue to support that and be sure that it grows to be a very robust tutoring community partnership.
Thank you. Monica?
Thank you. So we know that testing is test of point in time, and we recognize that the impact of COVID did impact learning loss, certainly. But I think we'd be remiss if, and many people have alluded to, if we don't acknowledge that not just our students, but adults alike have to reintegrate into the new world that we're living in. To imagine that we're going to return to normal it's a false sense of security for all of us. And so while I believe that our teachers have the capacity and knowledge to be good teachers, we also have to equip them with the space, access to their own mental health, meet their own needs, so that they can bring their full selves to that classroom and meet those students where they are, as our students are are beginning to re-navigate that. You've heard them talk about the new program we've released with the YMCA and many other partners. I believe that's a first step, but the biggest step is more teachers and adults in the building to both educate and provide mental health and social services to our students. And I certainly believe that we're on our way to that, but it does take the community support to continue to engage and build out the program we know our students need.
Thank you. And my screen has shifted somewhat, so we will start with Sam. Or Samuel, I'm sorry.
Oh, Sam is fine, or Hershey is fine. One is we need more teachers in the classroom. That's the biggest thing that we need. We need the General Assembly. We have multiple candidates in District 6 that are not in favor of advocating to the General Assembly. They're not in favor of fully funding education. It's crucial if we're going to get all our kids back up to a high level to have teachers in every single classroom. And we need to put money behind that. Just like any business would, we have openings, we need to increase pay. That will help, that will ultimately benefit the kids. The other thing is I want to really commend the Wake County School Board. They get a lot of negative press unnecessarily. They did an outstanding job putting together this tutoring program. Last night they put, I think, $870,000 or so to it. They have almost 300 tutors available. And I agree with, we need to engage parents and let them know where their kids stand, and even go further and try to teach parents what they can do at home to help bring their kids up, because it can't just be at school, it's got to be at home as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Livingston.
Thank you so much. So if I'm not mistaken, the question is derived how to help assist scholars with their to reach the standard, right? And in my opinion, as an educator and as a teacher, not only for K through 12, but for adults as well, we definitely need to push vocational education. We need teachers who are certified in those classrooms, and we need to respect and really pour into our teachers who are certified, who are sacrificing to be in the classroom, because teachers are doing it not for the money, okay? We're doing it for the betterment of the future. We are pouring our life and our time into the betterment of America and our nation, and just specifically Wake County and the surrounding counties to be better. So I think we should really pour into our teachers, pour into their salaries, resources, social emotional health, and also to recognize, and I love what Ms. Waters has said, to always look at the child holistically, and to always pour into our kids, regardless of what resources they may need, and to pour into adult education so that parents can know how to support their children is essential. It's a community affair when it comes to higher education in our future, and we definitely need to work collectively. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
So the three things I believe that would help us to catch up from where we were pre-pandemic. Number one, of course, we need certified, competent, caring instructors in every single classroom. And then we do that through bringing respect back to the position. I believe our education secretary said that has been a challenge that we've had for years, where teaching has lost its respect. We can kind of trace that back to the early 80s with the Reagan study that produced A Nation at Risk. And the respect for the teaching profession has been eroded over the last 40 years. The second thing we need to do is increase instructional time, whether it is extended day programming, Saturday school, things of that nature. But we need to look at the instructional time and increase instructional time if we're going to catch up from where we were. If you're starting out from behind, you got to go faster and longer in order for you to catch up where you were. Finally, we got to diversify our instructional strategies and begin to use some of those research-based, data-driven strategies that are going to engage our students and going to assist them to learn the information that we're trying to teach, such as multiple intelligences, think, pair, share, and the small and large group instruction. I go on and on with various strategies that we can employ in order to assist our students to catch up. Instructors, instructional time, and instructional strategies. We combine those three things, I think we'll start seeing pre-pandemic results, if not higher. Thank you.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Thank you so much. Think, Pair, Share takes me back to, 10 years ago when I was teaching in the classroom, and those were strategies that were used. But I think realistically, what we have to do is recognize that our testing is one point in time. Our students did not get access to testing. And in lieu of these test scores that we are seeing, we're also seeing nationwide, Wake County has many successes. We had 31 different graduation ceremonies, and we got to see 11,000 students walk across the stage and get handed their diploma. Our students got $140 million in scholarships, and many of those students had CTE, Career Technical Education, the new term for vocational concentrators, which will help them enter the workforce with a skill set that they need. Those soft skills that we heard Ms. Johnson-Hossler talk about, the 4 C's, are integrated into all that we're doing, but we need the help from our state legislature, who has the obligation to fund our schools. And there is currently the same court case that has been litigated for 25 years over a sound basic education is still in the courtroom today. And so we know those funding sources are needed, and teachers are miracle workers, but they need help. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doug.
So I've asked several teachers what they think about the best strategy for making up the learning loss over the pandemic. And to a person, they've been a little frightened that there's going to be more burden showing up on teachers who are already stretched to the limit. So I look at what was said earlier. I think Michael talked about it. The things that Sam talked about how essential it is that we fund, that happens at the state level. But the county has taken care of getting teaching assistants back into the class as much as possible. And I think to give resourcing to teachers, they know how to, they're skilled at it, they will be able to overcome the learning loss. We just went through a pandemic, a lifetime event that we've gone through. We will recover from it, but the key then becomes resourcing the people who are going to be behind the recovery. And that comes to giving it's the other adults in the building, it's the school psychologists, it's the social emotional side of things, as well as the instructional part and the teaching assistant part.
Thank you. I sincerely hope that I've not missed anyone. My string moved, and is there anyone that did not have an opportunity to answer the question? Thank you. We will have our next question from Cranston.
Good evening, everyone. And one of the candidates spoke to this briefly, but my question is, given that the board has not approved a formal equity policy, what 2 to 3 elements would you seek to make sure are a part of that policy?
Michael?
The board has not approved and then I lost you.
I'm sorry, Cranston, can you repeat your question, please?
Sure. Given that the board has not approved a formal equity policy, what 2 to 3 elements would you seek to make sure are a part of that policy?
If we ensure that every student and every seat and every class and every school is receiving a high quality education, that's your equity problem that's resolved. Every student, every school, every seat getting a quality education based upon their need, So that's something that we need to reevaluate to make sure that our schools are receiving the resources. And it may mean us taking a more innovative approach to how we're funding. We all eat from the same plate. And so we may have to share some food sometimes. I came from, there were 6 of us and my family wasn't rich. And so sometimes I had to eat from my brother's plate to make sure that everybody was able to get something to eat. Well, we're doing that right now. There's one pot of money that we all share from. So we may have to share some resources. So let's make sure that every student, every school, every seat is receiving quality education, and then everybody is respected for who they are, how they look, learn, love, and live. Once we do those 2 things, everybody gets quality education, everybody's respected for who they are, our equity problem is going to be resolved. And that's going to come through training, that's going to come through bringing in consultants possible, that's going to come through going through some different workshops, etc., to make sure that staff are aware of their unconscious biases, as well as students are aware of their biases. Respect.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
Education. You're welcome.
Tyler.
Thank you so much for that question. Well, every student is receiving a basic and sound education, but we have to look at it from another perspective because certain students receive certain resources based on their zip code. And so I think we have to, excuse my dog, I'm so sorry. I guess he's fired up about equity as well, but I think that we have to look at every student's zip. I think it goes deeper. We can't determine a student's outcome based on their zip code. So we have to ensure that our students feel safe, they feel heard, and also making sure that teachers are trained on implicit biases and that we look through it from a systemic approach. Because when we look at the data, Black and brown students with learning disabilities often fail short of the big slice of the pie. So we need to center those needs of those students and then carve and ensuring that everyone has a slice. But I do think that we have to look at it from a racial justice lens, because it does affect those students that look like me the most. And so I think that is something that we must lift up, and I'll stop there. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Doug?
When we think about the comprehensive whole district, it is just as Tyler said, not all schools look the same, act the same, feel the same. And how do we begin to redress imbalances often associated with racial makeup within the schools? And I think it's to be fundamentally aware of where resources are short and make sure those resources are shored up. I think we did a good job around technology in that issue. I think that to recognize that wherever there are disparities, we want to make sure there's quality education available to all the children in our county.
Ms. Livingston?
Thank you so much. The conversation of equity really gets me kind of fired up, because to me, it's basically common sense. The county knows which districts need funding. The county knows the demographic of per those districts, and they have that data. We need to really pour into the communities that need those resources. It just needs to happen, and it needs to be an effect that happens effectively immediately. Regardless of, if we get more funding or not, we need teachers that are certified, that have the vocational awareness and the ability to design and redesign courses and curriculums and lessons to push those opportunities into low poverty communities and districts. So I think it's a plain, easy, simple question to me, because I'm a Black American woman. And I feel as if, our children, they're growing every day. We can't, we don't have time to kind of waste on that, because they're growing faster than we blink, and they're a whole different age, right? And I just think that they're growing at a fast pace, and we need to be able to pour into these kids respectfully and pour in the resources per the district, because we have the data on the demographic. So we just need to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynn?
Thank you. So I am aware that the school system, the school board is reevaluating the equity policy and in development of that. And I think it's like it has to be a whole child approach and the whole child education belief. And so some students need different and more supports than others. And we've modeled that in some of our schools. We have a school that is partnered with the YMCA in District 4 in Tara Waters District that has that whole child communities model. And so, we know how to do it. And I think that's got to be baked into an equity policy as a whole child approach. And equity also has to be reflected in our strategic plan, which the current school board is also revamping. And I would be in support of adopting that language and making sure that equity is a pillar of that strategic plan. And I think it might be completed before the elections take place, but it is something that I support being a part of that plan.
Thank you. Ms. Waters?
Thank you. I have 2 students of my own who are enrolled in public schools here in Wake County. And it is important to me that we do have an equity policy that addresses systemic barriers to success for our students. Like Ms. Livingston said, I believe it is important that we allocate resources to our students in our schools who need it the most. I'm also in favor of policies that are related to discipline to make sure it is equitable, particularly in Black and Brown communities. And I also favor policies that specifically address the needs of special education students who often receive disproportionate number of suspensions and other disciplinary actions. So it's important to me that we focus on allocation of resources and making sure that our students are safe and that we have an operational policy, not something that is just on paper, but that there are actual functions that can be seen throughout the district and it touches every student and every employee of the district, and that we have ongoing training to make sure that our students and our staff are all equipped to understand how to apply an equity lens, so that when we make policy decisions, we are looking and thinking and asking the important questions to make sure that we are actually serving all of our students and meeting their needs wherever they may be, and allocating the resources where they need to be to make sure that all of our students have the chance for the greatest outcome and to have the greatest future.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Thank you so much. And Preston, I believe your question was 3 parts that are needed in equity policy. I'm going to get a little technical because we're looking at this. And first of all, we need to define clearly what equity is and what it means for our district. If we are all singing from the same book, it makes implementing that a lot easier. We need to make sure that in that policy, we have standards and expectations so that our students, parents, teachers, and our broader community knows what we mean by that. And then we need to have accountability, and we need to know how we are going to make sure that we are holding ourselves up to those standards. In our practices and procedures, we need to make sure that we're enculturating this so it's not just words on a page, but there is professional development for our teachers, that we have programming in place so that our parents can understand what this is and what it means for our students. Because there are pieces where we need to make sure that it's not just a statement of what we believe, but it's a statement of what we do. So thank you.
Thank you. Cranston, can you repeat your question for the last 3 panelists?
Sure. Given that the board has not approved a formal equity policy, and to be clearer, there's been a policy proposed previously, but has not been voted or approved. What 2 to 3 elements would you seek to make sure are a part of that policy?
Ben?
Well, for me, the overarching thing is, and some of my fellow candidates have seen me when I walk around with the Carolina Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, and because I firmly believe when it says that the people have the right to the privilege of education and equal opportunity shall be provided for all students. Now, I believe holistically that the school board and has done overall, especially with the pandemic that has taken place, an outstanding job. And what has been brought out by Lindsay and Monica and several others, we have to take a look at where there are needs, because they're not equal across. And I'll give an example. In my district, there is a school that has a high percentage of Spanish as their first language and their parents. And I'm not saying we're not, but we have to take a look at just how that child in that school has the tools that they need. So in this policy that's coming up, we have to have that we take a look at, routinely look at where the needs are, because I think Michael said this, there is a pie, and we have to make sure that we share that pie, but where are the greatest needs? And it goes back to what it says is that we provide for every student. And that's, thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Ben. And Monica.
Yes. So again, I think I will start with, I believe that the equity policy has taken a long time because we don't want this to be words on a paper. And I think I've preached and will continue to preach that whatever we put in that policy must be coupled with accountability. While it seems like it would be easy to implement something, what we know to be true is implementation without accountability really doesn't hold true to the standards that we hope and wish for. So I'd like to ensure that we are addressing culturally responsive teaching and training for all of our educators and adults in the building who interact with our students. I want to ensure that we're using both their academic data paired with the discipline data to introduce new practices that ensure that we decrease the disproportionate suspension data that we know to be true for Black and Brown kids, kids with disabilities, also seeing our kids be moved and placed appropriately in AIG and academically gifted course. And lastly, to ensure that we are hiring, training, and recruiting teachers that represent our student population.
Thank you. Samuel.
Thank you. Everyone has done a great job articulating a lot of what can be said. It should be in a policy. I'm going to focus on a couple of points. I think it's important that we have, and maybe Wake County is already doing this, but some sort of equity advisory committee that's made up of students, teachers, parents, members of the community that can give feedback to what we are doing. I think it's really important to hear the voices of the students as we are implementing policy and how it is actually impacting them on a day-to-day basis, year-to-year basis, and to the accountability and compliance. I think it's really important that we have annual reports or semi-annual reports. How are we doing? And also make it in a way that the public can digest and the public can read and be very transparent about what we are doing. I think it's imperative to show results. There's a lot of noise from certain people about equity and what Wake County is doing, and we need to show not just to them to get them to be quiet, but why we're doing this and how it's impacting, and put that in reports that everyone can see how we are making good progress.
Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Mariana.
Thank you. And I've sat and I've listened, and I appreciate all of the questions and answers that have been given thus far. And as a former teacher out of the classroom where my students were long-term suspended students, which I often called my babies, and of course my own children would tell me those were not your babies, we're your babies. But it's the population that I embraced. Because as with public education, there was a myriad of issues that was in that household that had to be dealt with before we could even get to what 1 + 1 was. Such it is with public education. The one thing, and I really want you to only take a minute, because I only want one thing to this question, and it shouldn't take any more than 10 seconds for you to answer. Understanding that the General Assembly is the entity that does the operating expenses for the school. The county, as we heard last session, is only required to build the schools. What is one priority that is within your control as a school board member that you would concentrate on this coming year? One priority as a school board member that's within your control that you will concentrate on this coming year.
Thank you. Sam, we will begin with you.
I want to focus on facilities. I'm interested in green schools, the air in our schools, making it as healthy as it can be for all of our students. You said I only have 10 seconds, right? So.
I said it could be answered in 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you meant be done in 10 seconds.
It could be answered in 10 seconds. One part that's within your control.
Working on facilities and green schools is just one of the priorities I have, and really making a very healthy, and Wake County's done a great job, but I want to continue to build on that and make it really healthy environment for kids when they're at schools. That includes the food they eat and the air they breathe and all that good stuff.
Thank you. Monica.
So there's not a lot in the school board control, and most people don't realize that we are a public policy making body. So in addition to the equity policy, which we just talked about, which would allow us to put things in place for accountability, I would focus on redeveloping and recommitting community trust in our public schools, because without community trust in our public schools, it is why we're being impacted by what we're calling a teacher shortage, of teachers not wanting to continue to teach. Principals and administrators are retiring early because of the disrespect. So I believe that if we regain the trust of our community, show them who we are, what our commitments are, and create a community schools again, where our community knows that they are just equally as responsible for educating our students. And we've done that with Wake Together, with our tutoring. And I think there are many other ways that we can increase our student academic outcomes by including our community and developing public trust again.
Thank you. Ben.
The one thing that I can control is morale, and showing the teachers and all the staffs at all our schools, the entire Wake public school system, that I support them, and I will do everything I can just to boost them and to advocate for them. So I can control that. I can control go to all of the various schools and support the teachers and support the staff and support the bus drivers. My gosh, from 7 o'clock in the morning till 3-4 in the afternoon, and the coaches, by just showing them that, I love and respect what they do each and every day. So that's what I can control.
Thank you. Lindsay.
Thank you. For me, I think thinning the walls, making sure our community knows what we are doing in our schools, inviting them in. I think the tutoring program is one way we can get community volunteers and people who don't have children in our schools reinvested in our schools, feeling like they are a part of our schools and seeing the value of our schools.
Thank you. Ms. Waters.
I like to focus on communication. I live in the 27610 zip code, and I have a lot of families who live near me who have unstable housing and who have other challenges, and they don't receive information or give information in the same way other communities do. So being able to make myself accessible and available to all of our families is important to me. Also visiting and having communications with our schools regularly, and being a person that people feel like they can reach out to and connect with and share information and share their frustrations, their concerns, their joys, and just being available to all of our community members so that they have someone who can advocate and bring forth their needs to the greater community and give voice to those who are often left out of the conversation. So communication is where I'd like to focus.
Thank you. Lynn?
I'm going to say our vacancies. I so appreciate what Monica said earlier. It's misrepresenting the problem when we talk about a teacher shortage or a staffing shortage, because the people who know how to do the work are there. They're just tired of the disrespect and the bullying and attacks on them. So, however, that would be my focus. That will be my focus, because we can't do much else if we can't get kids to school because of a lack of bus drivers. If we have permanent substitute teachers, as much as we appreciate all of the people that are subbing in our schools, we've got to focus on those staffing vacancies at all levels, because otherwise student achievement, which is our ultimate goal and responsibility, is hard to achieve. So we need people in the buildings and whatever. And Mariana, thank you for making that point about the General Assembly, but through making Wake County a place where teachers want to teach and people want to work, we have to focus on that.
Thank you. Ms. Livingston.
Yes, thank you so much. And Ms. Stewart, those is my babies. They the smartest ones in the classroom. And one thing, that is exactly why I'm pushing vocational education. They deserve to have a skill. They deserve to have a choice. And that is exactly why my number one goal is to push in vocational education into every single public school. I don't care if it's public school. I don't care if it's charter school. I don't care. Our kids, it's about the future of our nation, y'all. And our kids deserve to have a choice. If they don't decide to go to college, they have to have a career. They have to have a skill. They have to be able to be stable on their own. And that is what we must push, because those kids who you think are the behavior are the smartest ones in the classroom, and they deserve every single resource we can pour into them. And we know who they are. We know what district they're in, and they're the smartest kids we got in our counties. So we must pour into them, and vocational education is what I think is going to lead the way. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, because everybody else is going to work on their one thing, I definitely want to work on rebuilding trust. Like Monica said, I want to definitely work on boosting morale, like Ben said. But because those things have been said, I will work on all those along with. I think the county has already made it clear they would like to combine what's happening with schools with some already funded county programs. So if we can deal with food issues and community service issues and integrate that with the schools, I think that would be a priority that would allow us, without having to budget more, because the General Assembly has already said no to things. If we can take what's already existing in the county and make it more accessible to our students, I'd like to work on that.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we will move to Tyler.
I agree, Doug. It's very hard to talk about your one thing when it's been said, but one thing that I would like to echo or add to the conversation is appreciation. Appreciation for all of our staff, our teachers, those school personnel who show up daily, dealing with the disrespect, dealing with the shortages, but still showing up to give our students their all. And so through every policy I look through that I will push for will be with our teachers in mind, and making sure that Teacher Appreciation Week is not just a week, it's a year. And every day that our teachers show up, and our school staff and our secretaries, who are the backbone, those school clerical staffs are the backbones of every school. I know so because I worked with a bunch of amazing ladies at Enloe Magnet High School in District 4 who showed up and was there. The first person that you saw and the last person you saw, those are the folks that are often left out of the conversation. So that is what I will do, is just, respecting all of those who show up. So I think appreciation and respect go hand in hand in my book.
Thank you. Michael?
We got to come out of the boardroom. And so parental engagement or community engagement would be my top priority. A lot of our people who have issues and challenges and needs, they don't come to school board meetings, but they have concerns. Their children are being disciplined at a higher rate than everybody else. They are having some additional challenges than a lot of other people. So we have to begin to go to the community, begin to visit churches, social groups, fraternal organizations, etc., to begin to talk to the persons whom we serve, to find out what their needs are, and then to bring those issues, concerns, whatnot, back to the board so that we can create some policies and actions to accommodate and to deal with them. We have to get out of the boardroom. We have to go into the community to find out what the needs are, what the challenges are, so that we can properly implement policies to address those needs. If they won't come to the meeting, we got to bring the meeting to them. This is a forum to do it, but there's nothing better than actually seeing them face to face, going to the churches, going to the other community organizations, the community action committees, etc., that they have throughout the county, and begin to talk with them about some of the challenges that they're facing and how we can address them in the schools. So parental involvement, community involvement would be my #1 priority.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Ms. Barnes.
Well, I too have worked I didn't work for the school system, but I was the chief BEH consultant for the State Department of Public Instruction. And my job was to protect those children that had special needs and that were being disciplined and expelled from school at higher rates. And I'll tell you what I did. I went down in the western part of the state, and instead of putting the children out, I suggested that they go back and do the old-fashioned thing, require the kids to stay after school. Because a lot of times putting the kids out was like throwing the rabbit in the briar patch. They wanted to be put out of school. And then the other thing that I did was I put together a committee of retired educators to go to the school system and to attend those meetings with the parents, because a lot of the parents felt intimidated because often they did not have the same educational credentials that the teachers did. And a lot of them didn't know how to properly advocate for their children. So that was some of the things that I did. And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, but the kids' grades started to improve and the explosions started to decrease. It really worked. And I did some other things that I'll be willing to share that also worked. But my question this time involves safety. True safety. I've heard the term safety used quite a bit tonight. But my question to you is, what uniform required strategies would you employ to ensure that our school system does not experience the possibility of a Uvalde event? And I'd like, some specifics if you have any.
And can you repeat that one more time, Ms. Barnes?
Okay, I'm asking what required uniform strategies would you employ to ensure that the Wake County school system don't experience an episode like they did in Uvalde, Texas?
We'll start with Doug.
Well, I think, I think taking a holistic approach seems to be a recurring theme whenever I ask people who have been thinking long and deep about this issue. And so we do have to think not just about SROs, but we also have to think about school psychologists and think about social workers and think about even nutrition as an issue, looking at a whole child and what they're dealing with so that we can begin to develop the relationships that will lead to the kind of interventions that will actually keep these things from happening from the perspective of a child. I think another thing that we do is make sure that it doesn't appear that there's going to be a political will to not have SROs in schools anytime soon. And so to make sure that the training continues down the path that it's been going down, which is to train SROs specifically to be dealing with children, how it works with children as opposed to the enforcement that have the law enforcement training that they received. I think the other issue around training is to deal with the disparities that happen with Black and brown students as they interact with law enforcement as opposed to other populations. And so looking at this from a comprehensive, holistic approach, how do we approach it? I think we do what we can to make sure that we're dealing with the whole human being when we deal with our students.
Okay, I'm also talking about safeguards. What would you do to ensure that those schools are safe? Would you require that doors are locked? Would you require metal detectors, or what would you try to put in place to try to make children feel safe, when they go to school each day? Go ahead.
Me again?
No.
I'm sorry, Ms. Barnes. You'll have to clarify what portion of the question you're asking.
Okay, I was really trying to find out. Everybody's familiar with Uvalde, Texas, where the kids were killed. So my question was, what specific, and when I said uniform, I mean something that would be applicable to all of the schools. Is there anything that you all would do to try to ensure that the students are safe when they go to school now? Because Ms. Livingston had her hand up, Michael.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Let me ask Doug to see if any more he wants to add to that.
Well, I think I was in a meeting with Lindsay, and maybe you'll speak to this, Lindsay, when you speak, talking about an assessment that was done of our facilities and single points of entry and door locks and the things that have been put in place, and that assessment turned out well. We've actually been doing a good job on that. So what I would do is make sure we continue down that path. I don't think all of our danger is averted when we take care of plant or building issues, but definitely that's a place to start. I know that the other thing we can do is work with red tape. I've been talking with the PTA at Durant Road Elementary, and they have been trying to get the same locks that exist across the street at Abbott's Creek onto the doors of their classrooms, and they've been trying to do that for almost a year. And they've raised the money. They're willing to get the locksmith. They just can't get the approval. They don't want any special kinds of locks. They just want to go get the same locks that have already been approved across the street. Because right now, a teacher cannot lock the class from inside. And so they keep running into red tape. And so how to get past the red tape to be able to implement things that have already been approved as best practices, how to do that without having to deal with that kind of administrative stuff.
Thank you, Doug. We'll go to Ms. Livingston.
Thank you. As a teacher today, we had our first hard lockdown, and it was just a practice. It was a practice, but we need more of that. We need more drills. We need more hard lockdown practices and soft lockdown practices. We need more fire safety practices. We need to ensure that doors are locked and secured. And I know a lot of people do not like to talk about SROs. I'm a fan of it. I always have friendly SROs. They were trained. They knew me. They knew every single kid in and out of that school. And if you can sit here and really witness an elementary school massacre, we are a nation of massacres, and our elementary school children were massacred. I believe in SROs. I believe in trained SROs, even in elementary schools. And I believe we need a layout of each and every door of each and every facility, whether we build it or rent it. We need a layout of those doors, windows to secure them effectively. And we need to drill our teachers and our schools, our scholars, to know how to practice, whether it's a soft hard lockdown, fire drill, tornado drill, whatever it is. We need that on a monthly basis, not just quarterly.
Thank you. Samuel.
Thank you. So I want to compliment the school board again for initiating the audit, the safety audit. And there's a lot of great stuff in the safety audit that I wish the community at large would read. One thing that I learned, I can't remember if I was with Lynn talking when we found this out, is I think there are slightly different visitor entry. I'm not even sure how to say it. When someone comes to a school, it's not the same at every single school. It's not the same way to get into every single school. And there's a little variation. I think that's what we were told the other day. But honestly, I would look at and I would recommend the public to read the audit. It's on Wake County Public School System. There's good advice in there. I'm really happy that the Wake County School Board is going to follow this, as from my understanding. There's a lot of good stuff in here. The Wake County School Board is doing the right thing. And I want to emphasize too, there is no guarantee that we can prevent anything. So people have to understand that. And it is, as the parent running in District 6 with a second grader, I'm not even going to talk about it because it is heart-wrenching. But we will do our best. I think Wake County is doing a great job. They will continue to do a great job. And we will just pray that, we can end it. It's got to go beyond schools, but I'll leave it at what Wake County School Board has already done.
Thank you, Samuel. Monica?
Yes, you've heard people mention our safety audit, which we had on all nearly 200 schools. And again, in that safety audit, which we presented publicly several months ago, laid out every single school has a full layout plan that is only available to law enforcement fire department. So sadly enough, we can't say to the public, here's the layout of Enloe High School, because that actually puts our students at greater risk. Right. Mostly what we saw in that audit was human error. It's also what you saw at schools where there's been school shootings. It wasn't because those schools didn't have a school resource officer. It wasn't because those schools didn't have locks. It was because people were leaving doors that naturally lock behind themselves propped open. So to the point that they were mentioning, we're getting a little slack, but we paid for lobby guard, which people are calling stickers, but it allows you, when you come into the school building, every single person has to check in. You have to put on a name badge to identify yourself. So those are the things that we have put into place. And I think the thing we have to talk to the public about is human error. That absolutely is one of the things that we are afraid to share, but we have to talk about what our individual personal roles are as we implement and continue to implement the strategy and best practices for school safety.
Thank you. Ben.
Yeah, Sonia, that's such a great question. And I'll tell you, it's one of these things that I think we've all come to realize that, we've got a generation, 2 generations now that know the rehearsal and the drills. Look at what our kids have got there. There's no longer just a fire drill. Now it's a safety drill because there's something tragic that either is taking place or taking place nearby. So this goes back to, the board has been very proactive on this because hope is not a method. We just can't hope and wish this away. So they looked at all the things and they looked at our schools, and our schools are different because they're newer construction, older construction. So this layout was done, and it also lays out what we talked about earlier, the resources, because it's going to cost us, but it is our priority, safety. And so we have to look at it. We have to make a conscious decision. And the last thing I'm going to say is we have to train our teachers, staff, and our students. When we say do X because of there's an intruder, then they have to know what to do with it. So thank you for the question.
Lynn.
Ms. Barnes, I will be very blunt. I am not interested in our schools resembling prisons. Wake County does not have metal detectors right now. That is not a vision that I have for our public school buildings. I don't want them to resemble prisons. There's an opponent in my race that supports armed guards in every school. That is not my vision for our public schools. Now, specifically, I do support cameras. I do support locked doors. I do support uniform protocol for visitors. And single point entry is sticky because with the high schools, the size that we have them, you can't get all students in a high school, middle, or even in elementary school in one point of entry. But I trust our security team. They are monitoring. I've been to 2 community meetings since the Uvalde shooting. One was only weeks after, maybe, 10 days. Lindsay was there in Holly Springs, and then an online community meeting with some people with the city of Raleigh. And I know that our staff, they are constantly looking at best practices, constantly looking at new advice, new security measures, constantly evaluating our security protocols. And that includes vendors. Vendors come to the system regularly with new products and new solutions. And the security staff, they look into that. And so it's a constant evaluation. That's what we will continue to do. That's what I will continue to do as a school board member, is continually look at best practices. But I don't want to see our schools resemble prisons.
Well, first of all, let me say, first of all, let me say I was not trying to advocate for metal detectors. I was just throwing out hypothetical things, and that's why I asked you to tell me what it was that you would do. No, I'm not advocating for that. Go ahead.
Ms. Waters.
Thank you for the opportunity to answer this question. I think it's really critical that we continue to have those third-party audits like the district has already done to make sure that we are regularly evaluating our strategies. I think if we let our guard down or become complacent, that's when danger leaks in. And so making sure, as Ms. Johnson-Hossler said, that we address those human factors to keep our children safe. And Ms. Livingston, her comments around those regular drills, there are requirements on the number of drills, but I believe in going beyond the requirements to keep our children safe. And I also believe in bringing in the community and the public. Very often there are warning signs that are missed when we have these mass shootings, to give people a clear path on how to communicate where and their concerns are. So making sure that there is a strategy and a method for whether it's a family member, a community member who has information on a credible threat, to be able to report that to the appropriate agencies. And then just addressing our children's mental health is important. We can't leave out that part, to make sure that students are healthy and that they are thriving in the school community. And that will hopefully curtail the next tragedy that schools may face.
Thank you. Tyler?
Thank you so much for that question, Ms. Barnes. And as a former teacher for the district, I've sat through far too many fire drills, school shooting drills, lockdown drills. And I know it's a requirement, but it also brings trauma to our students. And so we have, as a community, have to be intentional. And I know these things are a requirement. And I have been reading through the Wake County Public School Assessment. I would employ everyone to go through, and there's some great recommendations. But what we're seeing, and it is a nationwide issue. And when we talk about security, we also have to add the other piece to is the funding. And so I want to know if the General Assembly is going to help provide funds to ensure that our schools are safe and not giving a false notion of safety. And what I mean by a false notion of safety is is adding, I'm not going to support turning, as Ms. Edmonds stated, of making our schools like airports, because that gives a false notion of security, and that trauma falls on the backs of our Black and brown students. And that right there is a red flag for me. But what I will support is understanding that there is a very clear role for our school resource officers. And I'm so grateful that the district has a very strong MOU with all of the municipalities. I will also support adding more school personnel, such as the psychiatrists, the social workers, the school counselors. Those are folks who are trained to and equipped to deal with our students' mental health, because mental health and safety go hand in hand. And so we have to have the school personnel. We have to have all these individuals in order for our schools to be safe. And I do not, you give me I'm a former teacher, so when we talk about it, it drives me, but I understand I have time though, so I'll stop. But thank you. And I have more on my website for folks who want to know. Go to swansonforwake.com.
Thank you, Michael.
My clock is going to go off again, so I'm going to try to talk before it chimes. So there are two things. Number, we got to deal with the physical implements, the cameras, the SROs, etc. Well, the second part of that is we have to make schools feel as though they're a safe place for everyone, a place where everybody belongs. I'm not going to shoot up my house because it's my house. I'm not going to rob my house because it's my house. When we look at the perpetrators of many of these incidences, these were persons who were deemed on the outskirts. They were vilified, typically by their peers, by persons in the community. And so this isn't my community, this isn't my school, so I'm going to go and blow something up. I'm going to go and shoot up some students. I'm going to go and do something because I don't feel like I belong here. But when we begin to do things to make everybody feel as though they are a part of the community, that you belong here, this is your school, this is your community, and you are a part of this, and the school is a part of this community, we're going to have a whole lot less incidents that we've had, such as Uvalde. In addition to that, we got to do training. Those police officers sat out there for over an hour, if my memory serves me correctly. So we have to do some training that says, if you hear an incident, forget the book. You got to go in there and try to resolve the incident. You have to go in there and try to de-escalate the situation, despite what policy says, and deal with it on the back end. But those things have to happen. When people feel as though they belong, they're not going to be destructive. They're not going to commit fatal acts. And then secondly, we got to train folks to see if there's a crisis, if there's an emergency, we have to get in there and do what we need to do to neutralize the situation so that all of our kids can be safe. If that would have happened, when those two things happen, we would have had a lot less incidents than we do right now. Thank you. If someone is talking, I can't hear, maybe it's just me.
I wasn't sure if someone called my name, so I didn't want to start speaking.
Lindsay, I would say if you haven't answered the question, you can go ahead and answer.
Thank you so much.
And I apologize, my computer got stuck. Lindsay, I'm sorry, I had you up.
Nope, that's okay. As a teacher, I like to follow the rules and wait until I'm called upon. I think when it comes to safety, there is building safety. We heard a lot there. I think hugging our audit and knowing that we do internal audits with our security department every year. We have to talk about mental health and the behavioral needs of our students so that when they are in crisis, they can be identified so that we can prevent incidents from occurring. We have to recognize that we are a one-to-one device school, so we have to have safe technology practices so that our students know how to be safe online. And we also have to make sure that we don't go back to where we were hardening things so much after Columbine that we had zero tolerance policies that were disproportionately criminalizing our students, and especially our students of color. And so we have to continue to make sure that we are looking at social emotional learning and understanding how we meet students where they are and how we give them the supports that we need, because we cannot go back to a time when we thought punishing for small crimes or infractions was a way to prevent larger infractions in our schools. Thank you.
On behalf of the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association Impact, thank each of you for taking time to be with us on this evening. We greatly appreciate your responses, and we will certainly take your responses in our deliberations. You should receive some feedback or follow-up from us within the forthcoming days. Thank you again and have a great evening.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Michael.
Our next panel will be the North Carolina District Court and Clerk of Court.
And Michael, as we roll off the school board, Chris Haggerty was going to be able to come in late. So I told him to come in with this next group of people. So he'll be the only Board of Education member that's on with the District Court and the Clerk of Court.
Okay.
So if we could pull Chris Haggerty up.
Thank you all for joining us on this evening. The RWCA is a nonprofit community-based organization that has historically targeted historically marginalized population and policy that affects those particular populations. We have a panel with us today that will ask a series of questions. Prior to the questions beginning, we will ask that you take 2 minutes to introduce yourself, and then we will begin with the panel. We will first start with Lewis Meyer, Judge Lewis Meyer.
Just wave if you can hear me. Thank you, everyone. I'm Lewis Meyer, Wake County District Court Judge since 2012. I'm up for re-election this year for another 4-year term. It'll be my 3rd 4-year term as a Wake County District Court Judge. I'll be on the ballot for our District Court District 10E Seat 2. District 10E is all of Raleigh, south of New Bern Avenue and south of Hillsborough Street, and a lot of the southern part of Wake County, between the middle of Garner and the middle of Cary, and just above Holly Springs and Fuquay-Varina. Also on the ballot for re-election as a district court judge in my same District 10E is my colleague Judge Sam Hamadani, who is running to keep her seat, her judgeship in Seat 1. So we are not running against each other. And I am unopposed for my re-election. Judge Hamadani is unopposed for her re-election. I practiced law in Wake County for 27 years before becoming a judge in 2012. We have a high volume of cases in Wake County District Court, as our Clerk of Court, Blair Williams, can attest. But I'm doing everything I can every day to give every case and every party the individual focus and attention they need. I'm dedicated to being patient and courteous with all parties and helping people when they need help. I'm working to make our justice system accessible and effective for everyone. I'm committed to equal justice under the law, keeping an open mind and an even temper, and deciding cases fairly and impartially according to the facts and the law. I'm very grateful to be part of tonight's forum, and I'm thankful to the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association for having us be a part of tonight's forum.
Thank you, Judge. Chris?
Thank you, and I really appreciate y'all allowing me to participate with our judges and our county officials tonight. I had a conflicting event, and we've been dealing with some family tragedy just in the past week, so I really appreciate your flexibility. My name is Chris Haggerty. I'm the vice chair of our Wake County Board of Education. I grew up here in Wake County, went to Wake County schools, graduated from Enloe High School, where my son is now. My daughter's at Ligon Middle School. I've worked really hard in the past years that I've been on the board to address issues of student mental health, student performance, working with our magnet program. We have made a lot of great gains, but we've also a long way to go. And we need to continue down that road. Growing up in Wake County, I know as many of you have, you've seen what's happened when we've taken our school board elections for granted and some of the very bad directions that the board has gone. And what we need to do is we want to continue the good work that we're doing, trying to make sure that our schools are inclusive schools, that our schools are places where all students can succeed, no matter where they come from, no matter what their zip code is, no matter what they look like. All students need to have the resources that they need to get to be successful and lead fulfilling lives. So my pledge to you all is that I'm going to continue the good work, the direction that we have, and we're going to continue to go forward, and we're going to resist all the attempts by the folks that want to turn back the clock and change, to change the curriculum and take us in some bad negative directions. Thank you.
Blair?
Yeah, I want to thank all the sponsors tonight. It's been very educational hearing from the commissioners as well as the school board. Glad to have Judge Meyer on board as well. I'm up for re-election for the clerk of court. I am running unopposed, but as I've been, witnessing passionate people, I'm passionate about the courts. So been practicing law for 27 years. Eight of it was with the clerk's office before I was elected as the clerk in 2018. So seen it from a lot of different views, seen it from someone that's working within the court system, seen it from someone that's practicing within the court system, and then, just like the rest of the population, have been involved in some court proceedings myself personally. So, trying to keep that view. Prior to going to law school, I typically was in blue collar positions. I worked in construction, using my hands and my back as a way to make a living. Finally got to the conclusion that my back was not going to hold out, so I decided to go to law school. Thankful of that, and gracious to be able to serve with my staff of 194 folks who are dedicated to public service. So thanks for having me, and looking forward to answering any questions that you have.
Thank you. We will ask each of you or individually questions because of the makeup of the races. Our first question will be dedicated to Chris, and Sonia Barnes will ask you, Chris. Again, Chris is a candidate for the Wake County Board of Education. And I'm sorry, Chris, you have 2 minutes to respond to the question.
My question is, as a result of COVID, our students have fallen behind grade level. What would you do to help bring students up to the appropriate grade level?
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. So one of the things that we have been working on for the past several months, Chair Mahaffey and I, Monica Johnson-Hossler, Roxy Cash, and others have been working with our staff and exploring ways that we can kind of launch. It's a very aggressive tutoring program that will come in. Our teachers have a lot on them right now, and we need more teachers to handle the student load that we have. So we're reaching out to the YMCA, boys clubs and girls clubs, church groups, nonprofits, as many folks as possible to come in, get training where we have proven educational modules in teaching early literacy. We want to start with those youngest kids, the youngest learners, the kindergarten through third graders that probably struggled the most with virtual learning, and make sure we can build the fundamentals of literacy. And from literacy, we can build out their other educational skills. We have a program right now that, this thing, if we're getting this thing launched and with the volunteer commitments we have, it'll be the largest and most ambitious in the state. And it's one that we're finding solid support for in the community. We're rolling it out to a number of schools in Wake County. There's a website that's available on the district's website right now that'll show you the schools where it's available. We're working with a lot of our Title I schools because that's where a lot of our need is greatest. And so in addition to supporting our staff and in addition to funding that, as a board member, I'm also going out and, trying to be like a missionary for the program in the community to try to find more volunteers that are willing to come into the schools after school, during school, before school, and help all of these students. It's a commitment, but we're lucky in Wake County. We have a number of people in the community that support our students who are willing to do this work.
Thank you. Cranston, can you direct your question to Blair Williams, who is seeking re-election to the clerk of court?
Yes, I can. So tell us what in your record as a public official and or private citizen demonstrates your ability to be effective, fair, and impartial on the bench. And you can be as specific as you need to be.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned, I had 8 years of experience working in the court system, and those 8 years had a track record as the judicial official under the elected clerk. So we do have a portion that we conduct ourselves as judges. We are ex officio judges of probate. So I've got 8 years of experience, documented experience of dealing with some, some very sensitive cases. Some of them have reached the point that they've made the news. So track record of conducting hearings with folks who find themselves at the lowest point in their lives. And, part of the best part of my experience with the court system is when someone says, I may not agree with the result, but I appreciate the way that you handled and conducted the case. And that really makes my day, as a part of a team, which is the lowest paid of the judicial system. You find yourself being compensated in ways and helping our community. And I think that went a long way to continue my years of public service, of being able to reach people and let them know that even though the decision I made was against them, that I did it in such a way that provided them options to find a way for their family to move forward.
Thank you. Mariana, can you address your question to Judge Meyer?
I would be happy to. Judge Meyer, what do you believe is the most important quality a judge must have to be an effective jurist?
Mariana, I'm sorry, before he begins, I understand Jennifer Bedford is in the wait room. If we can see if we can get her on.
She's on now.
Okay, it's so hard to choose between fair and impartial. And we often refer to it and talk about it as if it were one concept. But I would say the most important thing for a judge is to be fair and impartial. I have a number of other qualities I believe are very important. The patience, being courteous to people, and spending the time you need to spend on their individual cases to make sure that justice is done.
Can you direct that same question to Jennifer Bedford, please?
Sure. What do you believe is the most important quality a judge must have to be an effective jurist?
I believe the ability to make personal connections and work as a team. I have benefited from the other judges like Judge Meyer since the governor appointed me to the bench in appreciating the knowledge that's already there in the judicial system. And for instance, in cases where, say, mental health is an issue, to be able to work with a representative from the public defender's office, to work with stakeholders within the community, to work with a prosecutor that has more familiarity with psychology. I think it's only together that we can move forward. And so considering how many people we deal with when we're working on the bench, I think it's making connections and working as a team.
Thank you.
Mr. Artist, do you have a question for Blair? I'm sorry, let me switch that around. Mr. Artist, do you have a question for the judges?
Yes. This would be kind of more broader for each of you to answer. I would say in a sentence, but to keep it kind of succinct, how would you define your judicial philosophy?
We will start with Ms. Bedford.
And that question is different if you're asking lawyers versus everyone else. Lawyers will get into how you want to interpret the Constitution, but when I'm asked it most often, I think people want to know how you prioritize your time and what is your goal in the courtroom. My goal is for people to leave understanding what happened, because I have experienced that whether they have an attorney or not, they may not understand the proceeding, and also that they feel heard, treated fairly, and that it's consistent within the court system so that people know what to expect. And then they understand why under the law things happened. I see cases where individuals are brave enough to represent themselves in a trial against a prosecutor. And it is remarkable to me how much knowledge people have. It's maybe not technical, but they do have a sense of what is fair. And so I feel like my philosophy is education oriented and not treating individuals who are representing themselves differently than you would treat someone who's represented by an attorney, because I think you really do have to level the playing field.
Thank you. Judge Meyer?
Well, I touched on some of my essential parts of my judicial philosophy in my introduction, being committed to equal justice under the law, and keeping an open mind and an even temper and deciding cases fairly and impartially based on the facts and the law. But during the last number of years, I've come to realize that my essential judicial philosophy is helping people who need help. As judges, we have such a unique opportunity and a really unique authority to help people who have gotten caught up in the justice system. There's a number of things we can do to reduce the costs of our justice system for people who don't have the money to pay. There's a number of things we can do to relieve people of the impact that failing to appear for court can have on their driver's license and their lives in general. There are so many things we can do to give people second chances, whether it's getting a person in a deferral or a diversion program if they're eligible, so they can avoid a criminal conviction. Or if they end up having a criminal conviction, getting them in a substance abuse treatment program, whether it's drugs or alcohol, or a mental health treatment program, or even an abuser treatment program, so that they can develop the skills to avoid repeating the conduct that brought them into the justice system. And the last thing I'll mention as part of second chances and helping people who need help is the power we have to grant expunctions. And we're doing a lot of that now in coordination with a lot of groups in our community. And a lot of our judges are involved in the clinics for expunctions. It's a very useful tool that we have for people who had their charges dismissed, or for anyone who had a nonviolent misdemeanor or even nonviolent felony conviction and waits a period of years. They may be entitled to an expunction. And also with Raise the Age, people that got a conviction when they were 16 or 17 and now wouldn't even be prosecuted in our regular adult criminal justice system for that. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Mariana, do you have a question for our candidate with the Wake County Board of Education? And you're muted.
I did all that talking and you didn't hear a word I said, Chris.
I'm sorry.
I will ask the question that I did as the Board of E candidates, and it centers around budgeting and understanding from our county commissioners that the General Assembly, is responsible for the operating expenses. That's a state responsibility. And the county's responsibility primarily is to build the schools. So share with me, what is one priority that is within your control as a school board member that you would concentrate on this next coming year?
And I want to clarify, in terms of the budget, or it's anything, something else?
I'm talking about it's not in terms of the budget, because you all are policymakers. That's what school board members do. You're policymakers. And so we listen to an hour and a half of increasing teachers and bring them, but that's not within your control, right? Because you don't have the budget, but hence you still have the issues with public education, right?
That's right.
What is one priority that is within your control as a school board that you would concentrate on this next coming year?
Okay, thank you. And we do have a little bit of a role in terms of advocating for more funding. And we were able to get, with a good county commission, more funding this year than we had in past years. And that allowed us all those reasons you likely heard in the previous topic. So I won't rehash that. We've got a couple important policies that we have to continue to push and to strengthen. I will tell you, for me, coming on the board, mental health had been my top priority. And unfortunately, the events that have happened that were reported this week with Wendell Middle School. We also had another student that had died in a car wreck this week as well. Students come to school today facing just immeasurable traumas, not just from in school, but also outside of school. And if we want our kids to succeed, we need to have them in a place where they can learn. So we really do have to address student mental health. And I've worked hard to try to get more counselors, to try to get more school and psychologist workers, but like you said, those are budget impaired. So what we needed was a strong mental health policy. And for the first time, we adopted one this past year. It's a prototype. It's based on what the state superintendent has done and what has come forward with the State Board of Education. But we need to see, what best practices we can implement locally. So for example, when we talk about mental health and we talk about disciplinary issues, are we looking at these issues from a perspective of like de-escalation? Are there ways that we can have more conversations, not just look at this from, this is what happened, and so here is the punishment, but why did this happen? And if a student needs help, what can we do to support that student? Those are things that I think ought to be part and parcel of our mental health policy. There's other important policies that we have in the school system that I've worked on as well, but I think a lot of them do come back to mental health, supporting the students and helping them to address the traumas that they face.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Barnes, do you have a question for Blair?
I do. First of all, you know that this organization has been working on evictions for quite some time. And I would like to know, is there, and I'm assuming that there would probably be a large percentage of evictions in the near future. I know we've worked with legal aid and county commissioners and different other folks. Is there anything else that we can do that might be able to help the residents in Wake County confronted with this issue?
Yeah, specifically with evictions, it's been very helpful to me to be a part of those conversations, to be able to advocate for additional resources for folks that are coming into the courthouse, because as the clerk of court, we have to walk a fine line of not providing any legal advice, but just trying to let folks know where the options are. And so what I found out that was very helpful was try to advocate to some of the folks that have control over budgets, such as the commissioners, to be able to try to fund a stand-up clinic. I think we had a little bit of success with the legal aid in providing some options to folks facing evictions. I know that one district court judge has been instrumental in kind of spearheading the advocacy of a stand-up clinic within the courthouse amongst the commissioners. I was able to partner with that judge, and in speaking with a couple of commissioners that were on the panel tonight, we're going to launch a clinic that will help folks dealing with family matters such as custody, as well as I'm going to still advocate for a portion of that stand-up clinic to help folks that are find themselves facing evictions. I think that goes a long way to helping the clerk's office do their job and kind of stay in their lane. And I think it really helps folks get some of their questions answered, as well as know what procedural options that they have once they come to the courthouse. So very excited to be working with district court judge as well as the commissioners on that, and hopefully we'll have something in the near future to announce as a start date for that clinic.
Thank you. As your closing remarks, please tell us why we should support your re-election, and we will start with Chris.
Thank you. And again, let me express my appreciation for the flexibility and the grace you all have shown in letting me address. And I hate to take away things from the judges and Mr. Williams, but I just wanted to express my thanks. Being on the school board is not easy. I'm not going to lie. It is a lot of hard work, and it is work that produces a lot of emotional responses from people. But we do this work not because it's easy, but because it's important. Every opportunity that we have in Wake County to mold and positively shape our students' lives is our opportunity. And this is not hyperbole. It's our opportunity to change the world, because you don't know where the next leaders are coming from. You know, we have an opportunity to reach out to every child, tap their potential, and let them grow to be the greatest that they can be. And, you know, we can't do that when there are people out there that want to limit curriculum, that want to restrict what teachers are allowed or not allowed to talk about, that have honestly just ideas that are outside of the history and values of Wake County and all of the good things that we've done in Wake County. I think if we all pull together, we can keep Wake County going forward. We can keep producing quality students, and we can go and we can address all of the things that need to be improved, everything from facilities to staff salaries to the curriculum, the academic performance of the students. We've seen what happens, again, and I don't mean to keep going back to it, but we've seen what happens when people take these school board elections for granted. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure we don't go back to that. I'm working hard to support all of our good pro-public education candidates on the Board of Education, and I hope that you all will, you know, look at us, look at our messages, look at our values, and continue to support us as you have in the past. Thank you for this opportunity.
Blair, why should we support your candidacy for re-election?
Thank you, and thank the sponsors again tonight. I think it's important that I get support because I get to work with 194 dedicated public servants of the clerk's office. So I manage that staff. Having worked in similar positions to what they work in now, I've kind of walked their walk. I walked their walk so much, I advocated for them to get paid parking, which I was successful for. That's something that no time in the history has any judicial employee ever had paid parking, and that occurred this year. So it's me being able to empathize with the folks that are providing the service. You know, that can't just fall on me. We have so much volume. You know, we take in, you know, on average $125,000 a day, and that is a huge operation. And so just being compassionate and having empathy for the folks that I'm grateful to serve with, and establishing the relationships with the judges in order to promote community clinics. And as Judge Meyer said, participate in dysfunction clinics. It kind of creates an opportunity for that office to do exactly what it's designed to do, even though it is the least staffed courthouse in the state. By the stats, we're down 30 positions, and similar to the teachers, we're funded by the state, and they're doing almost everything they can to undercut the urban counties as far as service. But I'm dedicated to making sure that our 194 employees are able to shoulder that burden and serve, you know, the way that our community deserves it.
Thank you, Chris. Judge Bedford, why should we support your election to the bench?
Being a judge has brought me so much pride, and I cannot express enough gratitude to Governor Cooper for putting me in this position. I have servant spirit. When I realized that the largest population in domestic violence shelters were children, I became a children's advocate. When 9/11 happened, I dropped out of college, joined the Army to help people. I am driven to help people. As a prosecutor, I represented victims. Then I went to the General Assembly and built bridges without regard to political party. I apply common sense and compassion. As a community, the courthouse belongs to us. We should be able to walk into a courtroom and be served, understand what happened, and leave feeling as though we were treated fairly. I believe I represent the community. I'm focused on accessibility issues. As a single working mother, I recognize there are childcare issues. You cannot keep a job and go to court 8 times in 4 months. You cannot take care of your children when calendar call is at 2 and the bus drops off at 3:25. These are issues that I believe our community wants known at the bench. Additionally, we have children victims, we have children witnesses, we have children in court. I appreciate my children's advocacy background because it comes in handy every day. I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you so much, Judge. And I do owe an apology to Blair. Blair, I do believe I called you Chris by accident. I apologize.
I will take that compliment.
It's getting late in the evening. And finally, Judge Meyer, why should we support your re-election to the bench?
Well, as I mentioned, I am unopposed this year, but like every elected official, I'm accountable to voters, and I would appreciate the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association's support in communicating to voters that I'm worthy of their support. I have, after 10 years as a district court judge, I believe I have the legal knowledge, the courtroom management experience, and the track record of good judgment and fairness and impartiality to continue providing a valuable service to the people of our county. As a district court judge, I also, in the last 10 years, and really in recent years, I've learned a lot more about what I can do as a district court judge to help people who need help. As I mentioned before, there's so many things we can do as a judge to help people, whether it's reducing their costs in the justice system or giving them second chances in the many different ways I mentioned. And I'm now very knowledgeable and indeed, I think, somewhat artful in figuring out the many different ways we can help people. And I would urge the association to support me so that I can continue putting all of those skills and all of that knowledge to use in the benefit of the people in Wake County. So I appreciate the time tonight.
On behalf of the Raleigh-Wake Citizens Association Impact, thank you all for joining us. We wish you a great evening and bid you a fair night. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This will conclude the RWCA Candidates Forum. I will ask President Barnes to provide any last comments that she may have.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank everybody for participating. And we promise that I will do our due diligence under the auspices of the great Mariana Pope Stewart, our PAC chair, and Michael Leach and Mr. Artist. We'll be in touch with you soon, but we want you to stay and come and join our WCA. We need all of the help we can get because we want to do everything that we can to make this community a better place for everybody to live, work, and be happy.
Thank you all and have a good evening and good night, everyone.